I know probably the feeling because whenever I go to a libertarian type conference, people come up and ask me about Paul Krugman. I say, I know that's a past life. I don't want to talk about that, but that's how they know me. So I'm going to do the obligatory. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you get into professional wrestling? What was that? What made that? Would you make that decision?
Yeah, and by the way, I don't like talking about Paul Krugman either, so we're on the same page.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Really, my life is an example of the American dream in motion in reality. I was playing college football ever since I was a little kid. I always wanted to play professional sports, and I'd hurt my knee pretty seriously. So I went to the Chicago Bears camp as a free agent. I wasn't drafted because of my knee injury. I was only there for a day. I couldn't pass the physical. I'd torn my ACL and meniscus and cartilage in my left knee. And that was obviously very devastating for me because I had my fingertips on this dream that I'd had ever since I was a little kid. But the wonderful thing about a free enterprise economy is your God-given gifts and talents. There's really no limit on how you use them except for your imagination. So in my case, just one day I was watching professional wrestling on TV, and I'd always been kind of a casual fan and watching at the friend of his in his house. And he said, we should try that. It looks like fun and might be good at it. So I got to thinking, like I'm a big guy, like the folks on TV, pretty good athlete, like the folks on TV, and my degree's in English. So I know all about Shakespearean theater and drama. So figured I'd give it a shot, and it was fun. It was something that I liked to enjoy. I really was having a good time. I figured that I could be successful if I stuck with it. Obviously, there's a lot of roadblocks and obstacles along the way, but nevertheless, I mean, the story here is I was able to parlay. I don't want to call it a tragedy because it wasn't that bad, but still a very bad event. And you really utilize some of the same things that had made me successful in one area and were able to transfer to another area. And I think that is very unique, and it's unique to America. It's unique to the free enterprise system. I've traveled all around the world, and a lot of places where you start is where you're going to end up. And the beauty about this place is the socio-economic mobility that all of us enjoy, whether it's going up, in some cases going down. But so much of that really depends on those talents and gifts that are inherently yours, as well as your willingness to work and create opportunities for yourself. Not everybody is going to make it. Obviously, that just is the case, but everybody has a chance to make it and fulfill their dreams. And that's something that you don't see in a lot of places, and certainly in a lot of economic systems.
So you obviously have a deep appreciation for, the market economy and individual liberty. At what point in your life did that become an important part of your character? Like, was that from a long time ago, or was that more recent?
So this is very strange, but my first ever memory when I was a little bitty kid, I'm like 3 years old, I'm riding in the back seat of our Volkswagen station wagon Dasher car. And I'll never forget this for whatever reason, but we're driving under some of the high voltage power lines. And my folks were talking about eminent domain and how, this goes right through the middle of someone's farm and how bad eminent domain was. Well, I'm like 3 years old, and that's my first memory. So I got off to started very early with that. And my folks were, I would describe them kind of as Goldwater Republicans, that old school small government Republican. And not like we talked about politics around the kitchen table or anything like that, but certainly they were very aware of waste that happens in government and frustration with how tax dollars are used and that sort of thing. In WWE, we're independent contractors, which means that we're responsible for quarterly tax payments and doing all those things. We also get a 1099 from every state that we worked in, every country around the world. We'd have to file a tax return. So sometimes my tax return would be like that thick. And I'm an individual, right? I have no idea what's going on there, So my accountant loved me because, I was one of his higher paying clients just because my tax return was so complicated, and that just obviously gets you to thinking when you're seeing what government's doing with this money and how it's wasting it and using it for really if not constructive purposes, sometimes actually destructive purposes. And it's your money. If I were ever to become president, that will never happen. But if in some fantasy world it were, the first thing I would suggest, because as president, you can't actually write legislation, but you can say, hey, let's do this, is that Congress repeal withholding tax and actually make everyone write a check to the IRS. Because guarantee you, if that were to happen, literally the majority of people who pay taxes in this country would be like, wait a second, you mean I don't get a refund on October or, April 15th after that I'm actually, this is money that I've already paid in? Yeah, that's the case. And then just look how they're using it. I think that might be the most revolutionary thing that happened in this country in centuries. Actually,
yeah, and on that, a lot of people don't. I mean, you probably know this, Glenn, but Milton Friedman was actually the one who kind of brought that in, and he later lamented and said that it was one of his worst mistakes.
Yeah, and I love Friedman on all this other stuff, and then now I'm like, oh, what were you doing, man?